Hey, I'm Jory. At NASA, we pay tribute to the women in STEM who continue to lead the way for change in our society and culture. This March, we shine a spotlight, just a few, in honor of Women's History Month. Did you know human computers were a huge part of NASA's history? Serving for 34 years at NASA, Annie Beasley paved the way for women's rights by helping supervisors address issues such as gender, race, and age discrimination.
And on the other side of the country, Helen Ling hired women computers who wanted to be engineers, but who didn't have the necessary education.
Over the years, more women were trained to be NASA astronauts.
While she never went to space, Dr. Patricia Cowings became the first American woman scientist to be trained as a payload specialist, and even developed a method to train astronauts on how to combat motion sickness during spaceflight.
Did you know? A NASA engineer was inspired by a drinking straw to create a new way to clean up toxic waste. Well, it's true.
NASA environmental engineer Jackie Quinn was hit by inspiration in the cafeteria when she came up with an invention to clean up contaminated water and soil, all thanks to a drinking straw.
Houston, do you copy?
In 2001, Ginger Carrot became the first non-astronaut capsule communicator, aka the person who relays information from mission control to astronauts in space. 4 years later, Ginger became NASA's first Hispanic female flight director.
From politics to science, pioneers to engineers, women are making history every day. And that is worth celebrating.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us in celebrating Women's History Month at NASA. My name is Sarah Adewumi, and I am a cybersecurity specialist here at NASA Goddard. This year's Women's History Month theme, as announced by the National Women's History Alliance, is celebrating women who tell our stories. Women at NASA serve as role models for young women, and by sharing our stories, we can inspire the next generation and help launch them on STEM pathways. The Office of STEM Engagement is excited to support this goal and announce the new agency-wide Women in STEM 2023 initiative to mobilize women at NASA to participate in student engagement opportunities. To talk more about this initiative, please welcome Chris Brown, Deputy Associate Administrator of NASA STEM Engagement.
Good morning. Sarah, thanks so much. I am delighted to be with all of you, and especially I am pleased and excited to be back here at Goddard, back home, so to speak. This is where it all started for me in my NASA career as an engineer. We are here today to mark Women's History Month and celebrate the contributions and accomplishments of women at NASA today and throughout the history of our agency. I'm honored to be joined today by a few of our women of NASA who have charted the path, who are charting paths for us and are going to be part of our panel discussion. Our goal for today is to particularly honor the women of NASA who have charted those paths before us and their collective legacy with an invitation to join us on a critical mission. I like to frame it as we are on a mission of creating possibilities. At NASA, an important element of our work and our agency's mission is devoted to building a diverse future STEM workforce. We do that by providing a spectrum of opportunities and activities designed to inspire and engage students, that next generation of scientists, engineers, and explorers. NASA's investments in engaging students are vital to our collective ability to continue the work we do and advance our future work in exploration and discovery. And we need your help. The theme of this year's Women's History Month is, as Sarah said, celebrating women who tell our stories. I'd like to focus on that for a few minutes. The women you'll hear from today have compelling stories to tell. But in fact, we all have powerful stories to tell. If I could have you take one thing away from today's session, is that I would like you to hold on to that idea, that each of us, you, have powerful stories to tell that may touch a young person, spark their imagination, resonate with an experience they've had, inspire them to see possibilities, or dream big. NASA's committed to building a diverse next generation STEM workforce and to broadening participation in order to increase diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in STEM. Let's talk about why we need to invest in this work. I'd like to note 3 relevant areas of need. First, there is evidence that the current domestic supply of STEM workers is not sufficient to meet our nation's future needs. Estimates suggest that the United States will need 1 million more STEM professionals than it's on track to produce over the next decade. Second, a large proportion of our current STEM workforce is at or nearing retirement, and that's especially true here at NASA. We need to move into action to support a healthy pipeline of future STEM professionals to meet increasing demands. And finally, third, currently women and other minority populations are disproportionately represented in STEM fields. We must shift our demographics of the STEM workforce to better reflect the population of the nation that we serve. Let's dive in just a bit deeper. While women make up 51% of the college-educated U.S. workforce, only 29% comprise the science and engineering workforce. In some notable fields, particularly in the physical sciences and computer science, the disparity is very large. For instance, women make up less than 16% of the engineering workforce and only 26% of the computer science workforce as examples. When I started in engineering just a few moments ago, there were less than 9% of women in the engineering workforce. I was literally the only woman in the room. While the landscape is better now, it's not where it needs to be, and we know that. And unfortunately, women of color are even more underrepresented. Hispanic women make up only 2.3% of the science and engineering workforce. Black women or African American women make up 2.5%, and Native American women less than 1%. And beyond gender overall, we need to shift the demographics of the science and engineering workforce. Blacks or African Americans, Hispanics or Latinos, American Indians or Alaska Natives together make up a greater share of the general population than they do of those working in STEM. In order to reflect our nation's population, we clearly need to do better, not to mention sustaining a healthy pipeline and a diverse pipeline of future STEM workers in order to meet the demands that we are experiencing globally in areas such as public health, climate change, technological advances in multiple sectors, including the aerospace industry. Girls and boys, especially those from underserved and underrepresented communities, need to be able to envision themselves by seeing and experiencing people who look like them and who they can relate to, doing exciting work that makes a difference in the world. And that's where we all come in. So back to my invitation. Today I'm thrilled to announce a new initiative, NASA Women in STEM 2023. Our purpose, as Sarah noted, is to mobilize women at NASA to get out there and engage with students, serving as powerful role models, mentors, and guides. We've set a goal of 2,023 hours in this calendar year of service to students and educators, and we hope that you will consider getting involved. Through a dedicated internal website, you can register to participate in the initiative, explore opportunities that you might want to embark in, and find volunteers for your own activities that you might be involved in or sponsoring through a shared calendar. Each center has a designated point of contact, and that's available on the website. And if you reference NASA Deputy Administrator Pam Melroy's email that went out to the workforce yesterday, you can find the link to that site. And I was told by our team this morning that we already have 224 people registered, and that's in less than 24 hours. So we're pretty excited about the prospect of you all getting involved. And there are many ways for you to get involved, and if you're out there already connecting with students, we're asking you to share that with us. In registering, we're looking for you to commit at least 1 hour of your time to get out there with students. While we aim to build a community of women who are committed to bolstering our efforts to serving as role models and mentors and to connect and work with students, I'd like to take this opportunity to encourage all of you, women and men, to consider getting involved to inspire and engage students, helping them to see themselves in doing that exciting work that we do here at NASA. And finally, I'd like for each of you to carry a vision forward. I imagine if you've probably noticed, if you've traveled anywhere over the past year or two, lots of young people around the country wearing proudly their NASA-branded clothing and having their NASA gear. It's really exciting to see clearly there's curiosity out there, affinity and interest to what we do, and this bond in a way to NASA. Think about this mission that I've invited you to join us on in creating possibilities. Imagine if each of us at NASA took on the mantle of actively engaging students. We have the power to translate that curiosity and interest that's out there, that affinity, into action, enrolling more of these young people to consider and imagine a future in STEM. That's what Women in STEM 2023 is all about. I'm challenging each of you to join us in building that next generation of explorers, a diverse workforce that is energized and ready to take on the work of tomorrow. Thank you all so much for being with us today, and I look forward to us all sharing our stories. As I tell students, the universe is out there waiting for them. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. Through their accomplishments and dedication to their jobs, women at NASA embody the spirit of Women's History Month. Today, I'm joined by leaders at NASA like Chris, whose work in promoting STEM in their communities is leading the way for the next generation of women in STEM. Please join me in welcoming our other speakers, Crystal Johnson, Sandra Kaufman, and Mamta Patel Nagaraja. Thank you all so much for joining us here today to talk about your experience as women in STEM and the work you do to engage with the next generation. To kick it off, I would love for each of you to give a brief introduction about what your current role is and what it entails. Let's start with you, Crystal.
Hey, I'm Crystal Johnson. I'm the Deputy Center Director for Research and Technology here at Goddard Space Flight Center. I'm responsible for shaping the missions of the future in astrophysics, earth science, heliophysics, and planetary science, and then making sure we have a portfolio of technology investments to make sure that we can enable those amazing missions that we're creating for the future.
Can you hear me? Okay, now I can hear. I'm Sandra Kaufman, and I am the Deputy Director for the Astrophysics Division within the Science Mission Directorate headquarters. And we are responsible for the entire universe, except for one star, 8 planets, and a few rocks. And that's all I can say.
My name is Mamta Patel Nagaraja, and I'm the Associate Chief Scientist at Headquarters for Exploration and Applied Research. And my job is to advise the Chief Scientist in any area where humans are doing science in space. So that could be on the ISS or future missions to the moon through our Artemis program as well.
And Chris?
And you've already heard from me as a Deputy Associate Administrator for STEM Engagement. I have the fabulous job of leading our team across the agency and inspiring and engaging students and supporting educators and educational institutions. It's a great way for me to give back after years of service in engineering and to really do something I'm very passionate about.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for sharing about your current work that you're doing. And I know that each of you have powerful stories to tell about your paths and careers. Could you briefly touch on notable moments in your journeys, and particularly how it all started? Chris?
Let's start with me. Oh, yeah. So for me, I always talk about how it all started because I grew up in a teeny town in rural Pennsylvania and was the first person in my family to go to college. And for me, the path to STEM started when my dad brought home a Lego set that I think it was about 6 years old at the time. And through that, really, I started to discover a real interest and affinity to building things. And that creativity and led to me drawing and designing and into art. And I ended up thinking that I eventually wanted to be an architect. And so I started as an architecture major at Virginia Tech. And about a year in, realized that I really had more of an affinity for the tangible building of things through engineering. And that has been, in a sense, a thread. As I look back so far on my career, it's been a thread for me that I have been an architect, a creator, an innovator in that inherent creativity in the work that we do is something that I talk about with our audiences, with students, and with educators. I think engineers, sometimes get a little bit of a bad rap, right? Stereotypically, in that we're geeky and we're not creative and we think inside the box. And that's actually the antithesis of what really happens, is that we're thinking out of the box, scientists as well and technologists. And so I try to convey that with students as much as I can to talk about the attraction of literally how exciting it is to work in a team, and we've all had this experience, where you're creating something that didn't exist. It was an idea that somebody had. And there's so much richness in the work that we do.
So for me, it started, I thought that I wanted to be a computer scientist, a computer engineer in the very beginning. And I was a part of the Lincoln Aerospace Engineering Recruitment Program, which was at Lincoln University. And so in that first summer, right out of high school, they require you to go work at a NASA facility because it was a program sponsored by NASA. And so, we were required to do that. And the center that I chose was Langley Research Center. And so we go there, and they said that I was assigned to a physics lab. And I was like, physics? What in the world would I do with physics? And what are we going to do for the summer for physics? I was really disappointed because I was a lifeguard in Virginia Beach. That's where I grew up. And so all my friends were going to be spending the summer doing lifeguarding at the pools or at the beach. And I was really, upset because I thought I was going to be really missing out this particular summer. So I go to Langley Research Center. They walk me to the lab that I'm supposed to be working on. And there's this danger, hazardous laser inside sign. And I'm like, what in the world am I getting myself into? And so then the guy opens the door and he's like, okay, put these goggles on and don't lean down to the level of the table because there's stray laser light going around the room. And if it hits you in your eye, it can blind you. And I was like, what in the world am I doing here? This is not what I signed up for. And so we go in further, and this was back in the day when in the labs, we wore the lab coats with the big sleeves. And so the guy leans over to adjust one of the mirrors of the laser, and I hear pop, 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 and there's smoke because he got his sleeve in the path of the laser. And then I was like, yes, this is the field for me. You get to shoot lasers around the room, put holes in stuff. I thought that was really cool. And so As a part of that, I realized that in this kind of field, you are paid to think, no matter where you are. And the environment that was created for us at Langley in laser research and development, we would actually be in the lab we were creating new laser materials. And so we would look at a material, we'd do the testing for it, we'd try to make it work. If we couldn't make it work, we'd all hop in our cars, we'd go to the mall and we'd people watch or have ice cream, and somebody'd come up with an idea and we'd run back to the lab and try it out. Or one of my coworkers had a boat. And so we'd go out on the boat, we'd have our laptops on the boat, we'd take a dive in and somebody'd come up with an idea. We would work until late into the night because it was all about creativity. It was all about being able to come up with ideas, and we were so productive in that particular laser lab. So for me, that opened up a whole new way of thinking for me, realizing that it's all about thinking outside the box, trying things in a way that nobody else has ever tried them. And for me to have a career doing that, I was like, I'm sold. So every summer after that, I came back to NASA, and then they hired me after I finished my master's program. It's cool.
Very cool.
Thank you.
So I can say that mine started with moon landing, Apollo 11, and a single mother who never gave up. And I have to say that, when I saw that, it just grabbed me. It was just something that really inspired me. I was born in Costa Rica, and when I saw that, it was like, I got to go to the moon. Of course, I never went to the moon, and I don't like heights, and, that's not my thing. But that moment, I told my mom I wanted to go to the moon. And the lady kept reminding me every time I was doing something bad, it's like, remember, you want to go to the moon. You gotta, apply yourself. You gotta study. You gotta, and not repeat history because, she grew up an orphan and she had to, was self-made. But went to all public schools in Costa Rica. When I got to college, finally, they told me I couldn't study electrical engineering because I was a woman. And they were like 50 years behind the times, right? They wanted me to study industrial engineering, which was the only engineering that was accepting women. I wanted to study electrical, so I spent 3.5 years in industrial engineering, and I tried to transfer a couple of times, and still I couldn't do it. So I came here, and that was October this year will be 40 years ago, and I never went back. When I got my first job as a contractor for NASA, was just the best day of my life. It was just amazing. I graduated with electrical and physics, and the next month, right away, I went to a job fair, and I interviewed with a company, and I was just thrilled. And then one day I got a phone call from some guy named Franz Cepolina, and he asked me if I wanted to go and work with him, and I was like, yes, of course I want to go and work for NASA, So this February I had my 32nd year anniversary working, and I started with Cepi, and it was just such a treat, to work with him. But doing and following on the theme, the Chris and Crystal, it is doing the right thing and never giving up, and that is what I always tell the students when I go and talk to them is that the nature of your birth doesn't dictate the person that you can become. Doesn't matter where you come from. And it doesn't matter where you get your education. It's what you do with the education that you received, and with persistence and perseverance, you can be anybody that you want to be, or at least get as far, as you can, trying to do what you can. And I try to mix the space program with life because, failure is not an option, right? And so when things are going bad and we have failures in the lab and everything, we keep on trying and trying and trying until something works. Otherwise, if we had given up at the first no, we wouldn't have never launched not even the first thing, right? So we have to keep on trying. And I try to tell, the students, it's something that you have to keep on trying. You cannot just give up at the first no. Keep on trying, and it's not repeating the same thing, You have to reinvent yourself again to try again, but you create your opportunities. And I think it's very important that we have role models and show students out there that doesn't matter who you are, if they have a dream, they can try to make it true, or at least get as far as they can in life.
Gosh, my story, like Chris, and I didn't know this, and I know Chris, I love how you learn something every time you attend one of these events. I also grew up in a small town, not nearly as teeny tiny as Chris's town, I imagine, but mine was in West Texas, and I too am a first-generation college graduate, and our family as well. And my parents were immigrants from India, and we ran a little motel, and so we're not talking Four Seasons, and we're not talking even Holiday Inn. We're talking like the ones in the scary movies that you avoid. That's the kind of motel we ran, but not scary, but that's what it was like. And my parents quickly, they were in the cycle of poverty generation after generation in India. They were stuck in that cycle, and so I think their biggest goal was to get us out of the cycle. And I still remember cleaning motel rooms with my parents, and I can still visualize and hear my mom's voice from the bathroom, and she says, "If you don't want to clean toilets like me, Mamta," and this was in our native language, not in English, but same inflection, "if you don't want to clean toilets like me, then you better do well in school." And so I think that was just sort of how my life started. I knew that I was going to focus on my studies, and I didn't want to clean toilets for the rest of my life. And so that was it. And we didn't have much, and my parents fixed everything on their own. I still remember tapping sewer lines with my dad. Gross, so gross. But I learned how to tap a sewer line. Cleaning, we did a whole lot of cleaning, but fixing refrigerators. And my mom had this really amazing talent. Long before I knew how important it was to have female role models, I had one right there in front of me. My dad he had the mechanical, tactile capabilities. He would open up a broken refrigerator, and she could just look at the wires, and she couldn't do it herself. She didn't have the tactile, but she'd say, "I bet if you connect that wire to that wire and that one, that refrigerator's gonna work." My dad would look at her, and the fridge worked. It was amazing. So I had this just early life experience of seeing the way they worked together, my dad's incredible respect for my mom, which I think set the standard for me in life. Well before, this is me reflecting, well before I knew how important that was. But yeah, I think that's just sort of how it started. And then I started doing it with them, and that led me to a life of engineering. And then I crossed into science, which people think you can't do, but you can because I did it. My current position is a scientist position. So I think that was sort of how my career path went.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing with us how it all started, and specifically the stories and the wisdom within those stories, which reminds me of the theme of Women's History Month this year, which is celebrating women who tell our stories. What does that mean to you? Let's start with you, Crystal.
So I think Chris really captured it really well in her opening remarks. And so women who tell their stories, it's important for all of us. It's not just women, but especially women, because so many of us kind of run into challenges and we suffer in silence. When you hear the stories of others, you realize you're not in this alone. You're not in a unique situation. So many times I've heard women say, well, things are different for you in the federal government than they are in private industry, or they're different from you. You don't have the same kind of problems we have in academia that we have in industry. And the more I listened to all of them, the more similar, the more the same it sounded to me. And so when a woman is bold enough to tell her story and not care, what people think about her, but just share your story, there's so many people that are helped by that, because the people listening realize, okay, so this is not just me that's going through this. And then when you hear how they overcame whatever it was they're going through, then you actually have hope to realize, hey, there's a light at the end of this tunnel. There are things that I can do. There are people I can reach out to. There are mentors that can help me. And so it's just helpful all the way around for people to listen to the stories and for people to be willing to tell their stories. Both of those are important.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. And someone also mentioned the term role models. How have you acted as a STEM mentor, guide, or engaged with students? And how has that role impacted you and your community? Sandra?
Oh, wow. So I've made it my life mission to change things in Costa Rica. I came to the States in '83, and I had the opportunity to go back in '98. and they were still not admitting women in electrical engineering or other engineering, just industrial. So I was like, this has got to change, and so I made it my life mission to change it, and I did. And now there are more women in engineering in Costa Rica than ever before. In fact, I think there are more women than men. But one particular incident that always resonates with me is in that trip, '98, I went to Intel, had a plant, and this little girl was in front, just raising her hand and asking questions, and while I was talking, and she asked so many questions. And, and I remember her vividly, because she asked so many questions. So fast forward, I'm here, and I went to AIC, and this young lady touches my shoulder. And she's like, I don't know if you remember me, but I was at Intel presentation that you gave, and I raised my hand so many times, I asked so many questions, and you answered them all patiently. And she says, because of that, your patience and your example and everything, I am about to get my doctorate now. And and so that's one individual. The same thing. In my local community, I live in Arlington, Virginia. I go to the schools. I have a standing yearly visits with some of the science teachers, and I go and talk to the classes. I spend the whole day. I do the whole classes, and I don't think I can be a teacher. I don't know how they do it. I admire what they do, but I go through all of the blocks, and I teach all the blocks, and I tell them what we do, why we do it, why it's important, and I repeated all the blocks, and I do this every year, and a lot of kids are going into high school and trying to sponsor them to be interns. I started this program here at Goddard, and I took it to Goddard. This is the senior experience, and so I started with my high school when my sons went to school, and the last 3 weeks of their senior year, they can come and intern for 3 weeks, and I find mentors for them, and we got that rolling. That we don't have to pay, we don't have to advertise. Can somebody be a mentor for 3 weeks for some kid who is interested in what we do. And so when I went to headquarters, I brought it to headquarters, and now all the divisions and everybody are interested in having these interns, coming over and everything. And the other thing I also have done is I was a founding member of the AIAA Distinguished Mentor. And so, we get a lot of calls and, and go and mentor students. And that's just talking to schools and high schools and colleges and things of the sort. But in general, I also always have, 3, 4, or 5 mentees that I'm mentoring, women across the agency and men too. I mean, I mentor both. And, so I think it's such a enriching opportunity, because I think the mentee benefits as much as the mentor, and and you learn from them, and they learn from you, So it is just so nice to have somebody touch on your shoulder and say, you inspire me, or helping somebody, further career, or lending a hand and provide an opportunity, to see what we do. I mean, all of that is just very nice.
Amazing. And it's so inspiring to see the impact that can be had. And along those same lines, anyone can jump in, but we'll start with Mamta. Can you share a story about a time where you engaged with students or young people and noticed a real impact?
Yeah. So I think, and it goes back to, Crystal, something you said, when we tell our stories, I had to really learn how to tell my story. I didn't think I had a story. And then somebody says, somebody told me everyone has a story, and somebody had to pull it out of me and really got me to think about my story and who I had become and what shaped me. And I think it does take a certain bravery, at least if you're like me, who I don't want to talk about myself, and I don't want to get up on a stage and tell you about me, because I just think I'm me. But somebody can pull it out of you, and it definitely, I have had to learn it, and I've had to become brave enough to say it. But the rewarding part of it, I've told it enough and in front of enough diverse audiences that somehow I've started to attract, and I think it's because I just told my story, But a lot of young women and a lot of people of color, and the vast majority of the people who approach me come from lower socioeconomic upbringings. And that has been it's been helpful for them, but it has been incredibly rewarding for me just to have those relationships. Most of them are on email because a lot of them are younger, or FaceTime. I mean, they connect through so many different ways than how I would have connected with a mentor, going into somebody's office and thinking that was the only way to have a mentor. But the young generation, they find all sorts of ways to find you and talk to you. And a lot of them have just been back and forth. So I'll ask questions and can I FaceTime with you? And we'll FaceTime on the weekend. But helping them just know, somebody else said it, that they're not alone. So the one specific thing I'll tell you about is I was talking to a group of kids who came from immigrant families. You can understand why I was asked to talk to them. And one of them came on, and it was obvious that she needed to ask me something so intimate for her. She got real close up to the computer, and it was virtual. She got real close up to the computer, and she said, "I'm just different than everybody around me. I'm just different. I just know that I am. How did you handle that?" So I told her this story, which, Chris, you might remember, because I told it for the first time on a stage for an education event. But I remember being little and the kids making comments about how I smelled. I didn't even know I smelled. And I wouldn't have, so that made me not want people to come to my house, because then I figured out my house smelled. You want to know what that smell was? Curry. That smell was curry, but in 1980s America, nobody knew curry, and nobody knew that they loved curry. You said that now, people would be like, that sounds like an awesome lunch, right? But back then it wasn't. So I told her that, and you could just immediately see the relief on her face, like it was okay to be different. She wasn't the only one. And maybe someday people will understand and accept her better. But it was just having that connection to somebody, I think, was really important for her. And then for me to be able to go back into my childhood and realize everything's okay. Like, it's okay that I smelled back then. Totally fine. That's also rewarding. It's gratifying for myself, too, just to come full circle and realize those moments aren't the ones that define you. They feel like they do at age 6, but they really don't.
So there's one particular example for me. I was invited to come to Oprah Winfrey School, her school for her girls in South Africa, and she really wanted the young girls to see someone that looked like them, that was actually successful, and that could be someone that they could talk to and get some advice from. And this was associated with the Office of STEM Education. So the OSTEM office was conducting an event at the school as well. So we had a competition of the young girls. But the dean of the school came to me and said, "Crystal, there is this one girl that we don't understand what is happening with her. And all of the girls are from very, very, very low income, tribal areas, and so, or communities, I will say. And so this young girl, all of them were doing really well, and they're on their trajectory to go to college. But this one they could not get her to commit to going to college, and they didn't know what had happened. And it was her senior year. So they were like, we don't know what to do here. So we were in an auditorium, I got her and pulled her over to the side just to have a conversation with her face to face. And long story short, she did not want to go to college because her parents didn't want her to go. They wanted her to work in the community so that she could bring 5 more cents to the table for their family's dollar that they were going to make in the course of a month. So she was very interested in IT security. And so I said, okay, so here's the deal. If you can allow your parents to be upset with you for just a couple of years, let me explain to you the benefit you can have, not just for your family, but for your whole community. And so I told her, this is the amount of money that you can make as soon as you come out of school in this particular field. And I translated it for the dollars that they make there. And then I said, and just imagine, their family had never lived in a house. They were pretty much in a little shanty. They had never had a car whatsoever. So I said, for the first time, your family, your parents, can live in an actual house. You can have a car to transport them from one place to the next. And imagine if you were able to build a community center that could help the whole community, and no one else is able to do that. Just imagine the change and the uplifting you can do for the whole community because you're willing to let your parents be mad for the amount of time that you'll be in college. You don't even need their support to go. because it's already covered for you. You just have to go, you have to do well. And so she said, okay, I think I know what I need to do. And so her dean of the school later came to me and said, we don't know what you said, we don't know what you did, but you changed this girl's life forever. And those are the kind of things for me that makes my job so much worth the outreach that I do all the time. I'm so happy to do it when people ask me to come and speak.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that and showing how you can change the future for a family, for someone, and that's just so important. Along those lines, I do want to take a turn as well and ask Chris, what types of opportunities are you hoping to see the NASA workforce engage in?
Oh, great question. There's a broad spectrum of opportunities and activities that you can get involved with that are inherently designed to engage with students. You can serve as a NASA mentor for an intern. It's not too late to sign up for that. And we have internships that go essentially all three semesters of the year. So we'd love for you to do that. We have a range of STEM engagement events and activities that we do that include student challenges and competitions. We always need judges and guides for those. And in fact, we have, I think, about 9 of them that have culminating events over the next 3 months. And I know that they need help. So we would love folks to sign up for those. We have opportunities with partnerships. We have partnerships with the Girl Scouts, Million Women Mentors, and Million Girls Moonshot are some examples. But there are a lot of after-school programs and activities that I'm sure are in your communities. And having a chance for them to hear from someone from NASA or to have them have a NASA employee come and be part of something that they're doing, I think is a very powerful experience, both for them and for us. There are library activities, clubs. Girls Who Code is a good example. Girls typically do much better when they're working with other girls. And so there are a lot of activities and clubs and those organizations that are devoted to that kind of work as well. So I just encourage you to reach out, look at our site, but also you can reach out to our points of contact in the offices of STEM engagement at the centers, and they can also provide some examples of some things that you might want to get involved in.
Amazing, and those sound like amazing opportunities to get involved in. And I do want to leave our audience with just some advice, something to get us going. So just going down the panel, I'd love to know, what advice would you give to those who are ready to go out and serve as STEM role models and mentors? Manta?
I would say start small. So if you feel intimidated, you're not sure how much time it'll take, you're not sure if you have the time, you're busy, or you don't really want to tell your story, go small. If you have children, go to their school, start with their classroom. If you don't have children, maybe a neighbor has a kid whose classroom would love to have you. Those are probably the least intimidating in terms of, it's not a big stage, but it's really rewarding, man. And if you want to get stumped, do a kindergarten classroom, because they will ask you the hardest questions. And it's just, when you'll walk out, I would be shocked if you came out and said that you didn't feel a little bit of warmth talking to young students. They will remind you. Sometimes we get into these, like, work is work sort of modes, right? Go talk to kids and they'll remind you how cool your job is.
So everything that Mamta said, of course, but NASA has the Speakers Bureau too. So if you don't really want to, take on a mentee because of time, but you have time for one-off, sign up for the emails and volunteer to go to school. One time, a college, go and give a talk, and that is very, very enriching. But the other advice, if you do want to take a mentee, that I want to give you advice that I got a long time ago, and it's that you're the mentor. You're not there to tell them what to do, and your job is to extract from them what is it that they want to do. And unfortunately, some mentors feel like they have to tell people, you have to do this and you have to do that, and ask the questions, ask the the questions that are going to be able to bring out what is it that their path and what is it that they want to end up doing. But refrain from making judgment and telling them exactly what they need to do, because that is where you would like to go, but not where the person would like to go. So.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. For me, mentoring really is about you doing all that you can to enable other people to achieve their dreams, and helping them by helping them to remove barriers and helping them to kind of navigate through sometimes shark-infested waters. It's really giving them a different set of eyes from a different vantage point. But the one thing that I would say that is really, really important for anyone who's thinking about being a mentor, really think about the place that you're coming from in doing it, because there are some really wonderful, effective mentors, and there are some that are not so effective. And so you really have to be comfortable, and it has to be coming from a place of love, to tell you the God's honest truth. Really, it has to be about you caring about that person. And if someone is pressuring you to mentor or to get, enroll in this program, don't do it because somebody else wants you to do it. It really has to be something that you're passionate about in terms of being able to help others. So take that time to pause. If you're not comfortable, it's okay. You don't have to do this. It really, really needs to be something that you're passionate about in order for you to be effective. Because if you're not, the person you're mentoring will feel it, and they will get to a place where they say, this whole mentoring thing doesn't work for me. And so that's anti what we're trying to accomplish.
So everything that you all shared, of course, resonates with me tremendously in terms of the things that we really want all of you to consider. I think what strikes me most is that when I talk to students about trying on, I'll talk about putting on their explorer hats and trying on some new things and not being afraid of trying on those new things. So Mamta, what you said, it applies to us too, right? Is trying on something new with respect to reaching out to someone who's early career or who is a student. That is, it may be new territory for some of you, but I think trying on a few different things and finding in a sense your path, I think could be a really great way to look at it. And I guess I just go back to what I started with is telling your stories. The work we do at NASA is so exciting if you think about it. I'm just replaying what happened with James Webb Space Telescope just not too long ago, and how it literally captured imaginations of people all across the globe. And in the end, yes, it's the work, excuse me, and the discovery that is exciting and compelling, but I'd venture to say it was the human story behind it, the people behind it who devoted years and years of their lives to do their life's work, and how compelling and inspirational that is. And so I would say apply that and kind of look at yourselves to say, my story, Mamta, I think you said it, and same with me. I mean, what's my story, right? But there have been so many experiences that I've had one-on-one with students, but also with groups of students, where you can actually see that spark. You can actually see them starting to shift or envision themselves in a way that they didn't when you started. And you don't really know how you're going to touch a student or have that impact, but you do. And I just encourage you all to think about it. And I think it's like one of you said, what you give, you get back as well. It is just a rich, wonderful experience. And I hope that you will join us. I guess one last thing is we're really trying to drive systemic change in the work we do in STEM engagement, particularly in NASA's investments in what we do. We're trying to make that impact at a scale. And that's what this initiative is really about, is building that community of people who are engaged and committed to doing this work. And again, I hope that you'll all join us.
Thank you. And there's just so much incredible wisdom and knowledge amongst these panelists. That is all the time we have, but I did want to thank you for just sharing your experiences and your insight. This has really been just a powerful discussion on what an impact we can have when our communities get together and what's possible when we share our stories. So please join me in thanking our panelists. Women at NASA have built a tremendous legacy of achievements in exploration and discovery over the agency's history. And our community of women today are forging new innovations and discoveries that will have their place in history. This Women's History Month, we encourage you to explore how you might share your story to inspire, connect, and support the next generation of women in STEM through NASA's Women in STEM 2023 initiative. Please refer to Deputy Administrator Melroy's message on how to get involved today. This concludes our program, and thank you for joining us.